I can't believe people care more about your fucked up pear juice than anything I've ever done. Sorry, Dad.
Bring us and share us that moment of going on Gordon Ramsay show. Like, what was he like in real life compared to the version we know on TV?
Soul Tonic is a recovery beverage brand rooted in Korean history. We partner with a Korean man called Mr. Park. Been developing high quality vinegars and tonics for a long period of time. Before and after work, I was door knocking. I would just give them a free 12-pack, say, put it on counter. At checkout, it will sell. And honestly, 10 times out of 10, that's what happened. Weeks, we were the highest performing wellness beverage.
When you're really honest with yourself, what do you think the thing that will hold you back from getting to where you want to be?
The grind and the hustle is so real when you're growing, and there's going to be things that you think you're above and you have to keep doing it. You're a business owner, but you're also a sales rep. My entire final episode was a TED Talk, and it was all about Mr. Park and I. That was the whole TED Talk. So I got on a plane a month later and I went to Korea, and that was my winning speech in the end. So a lot of what I do is done based on humour, and I think having a really rogue sense of humour that some people don't understand, and I think that's what makes me me. And I look at everything in a really positive, humorous way before I see the negative.
The 20-year-old Sophie's listening. What do you want to say to her? Welcome to Chew the Fat. My name is Frank Grief, and I started this podcast after I sold a business for $180 million with my two brothers. It's part of my mission to raise $1 million for Children's Cancer Institute by writing a cookbook called Eat with Purpose. In this series, I'm going to bring different types of founders on for you can share in their journeys and their lessons and insights. I'm also going to bring on guests who are in the middle of scaling their business. I want to make sure the challenges are relative to you and make sure you can take insights that you can use in each and every day in your business. I hope you enjoy. Sophie. Welcome to Chew the Fat. So today, part of the mission to raise $1 million for charity, I have cooked you a little barramundi with baby capsicums, olives, and a little butter olive oil sauce.
Looks delicious.
Let's have a little bite. So I always like to ask one question about food. If you can think of the most vivid memory around a meal, what would it be?
It would be eating yak in China.
Oh.
Yeah, yak butter tea, I believe they call it.
What is yak?
Yeah, yak's an animal. Really, really strange. I just remember it so clearly because I was in China and I was really scared to eat it. It was actually delicious.
Amazing. Well, we'll take a little bite and then we'll get stuck into the interview. Yeah? Sophie Hood, founder of Soul Tonic. Welcome to Chew the Fat.
Thanks for having me.
So where I'd love to start, what's the context in your childhood that made the person you are today?
Wow, the context. God, well, I came from a very loving family. I think something that I've been reflecting on recently that's made me who I am today is school wasn't really for me. I always talked back. I think parent-teacher was my parents' most dreaded night of the year, and I never understood why I felt so misunderstood by teachers because I just said what I wanted, and that, which was, something that I used to be really upset about when I was younger, always getting in trouble for, speaking back, has kind of ended up being my superpower today. And I think that's made me who I am and why I'm here.
Amazing. I love that. And for those who don't know, like, what is Soul Tonic and what's the mission you're on?
Soul Tonic is a recovery beverage brand rooted in Korean history. We partner with a Korean man called Mr. Park, who has been developing high quality vinegars and tonics for a long period of time, but he's never really been able to get his brands out there because he's a manufacturer at heart and a farmer at heart. And I really wanted to create something, and I went to him. It wasn't that easy, to be fair. I went through the Korean government and met a lot of people, but went to him, and my mission is to create and show the world what these Korean recovery tonics can be like and bring people into a bit of Korean history.
Where does one go and find themselves a Mr. Park? Like, I'm trying to find the connective tissue here between,
that's a good
crazy
question.
idea, and where do you find him?
That could be its own podcast or a reality show. Yeah. So originally I went to the web, basically. I just Googled essentially how to find. I knew I wanted to use Korean ingredients because I was really hyper fixated on these natural ingredients that were grown in East Asia. I just didn't know how to create something from them or who to partner with. And originally I went to websites and I got scammed, and that wasn't good. And then I ended up finding myself at a Korean International Trade Association that sits underneath the government. And they gave me a translator for free, and I gave them my business plan. And I said, I need someone that can fulfill this. And they set up meetings with different partners and manufacturers. And it took a long time because every single sentence had to be translated on both sides, because Korea isn't like, say, a Tokyo or a Japan in the sense there's a lot of English-speaking people. When you go to Seoul in Korea, there's not that many people that speak English. So, it was quite daunting and scary, and it was the depths of COVID, so this was all via Zoom.
And can I ask, how old are you at this stage?
26.
It's like quite a leap, right? It's like a really interesting leap.
Absolutely insane. I was also doing it from the Red Bull office. So I had like the Red Bull cans behind me. And so every supplier thought that Red Bull were involved and were about to buy it. That's the only reason why I have a Korean partner, is because he thought that, this is the next Red Bull, right? He thought it was on this like insane wicket. But yeah, I just had to let him believe that, unfortunately.
That's so good. Was that by design, or you just happened to have Red Bull cans by you?
So Red Bull, if you've been to the Red Bull office, you'll know there's cans everywhere. It's actually quite hard to avoid. You can't go to a corner or a crevice where there's not the coolers or the fridges and, some kind of paraphernalia. Even if it's just an F1 car kind of lingering in the corner, it's just everywhere. So it wasn't on purpose. And then when I realized that it was actually helping me, I just kept with it.
Just started hamming it up. And like, what's the, why did you want to start a business? Was there something inside you? Obviously I'm taking that context of, that upbringing and being against the grain. What else was it that drove you to want to start a company?
I've always been really curious, but I never knew what I wanted to do. So I actually just followed a very conventional route. So I did commerce at Sydney Uni, and I actually started a graduate job at EY when I was 20 years old in consulting. So a full-time job at 20 I was quite young and naive. And I think that naivety has worked in my favor, to be honest. But I've always been interested in things and gotten hyper-fixated in just random things. So I've actually started multiple businesses on the side, none of which have been successful, but always just out of curiosity. And so when I discovered these Korean ingredients, it was just pure curiosity that kind of drove me into it.
It's really interesting you share that, right? Because I think a lot of the times people who want to start a business, they'll look really close into their world as to, might be the problem that I could solve, or what's, specifically I might be in a business and what's the gap. What I hear from you is kind of this outside creative thinking, which is like Korean ingredients, like it's driven you to a place which is incredibly unique and different. I
was just fascinated by them and just the science behind it. I was just reading these crazy scientific articles about these natural ingredients that were grown, and I was thinking, why do we put so much crap in our body that's artificial when we could be leaning on, the East Asian, when you think about when you go to like an acupuncturist and they give you all these herbs, it's very different to when you go to a normal doctor. So there's that, natural medicine versus Western medicine. And I think where the world's going is that's becoming closer and closer. And I was fascinated by that. And that's very different to everything I've done in my corporate career. Like, I'm a finance girl.
How's that? Has there been a through line from what you were doing as finance bringing into the business world? I
think the strategic thinking, and having worked at Moet Hennessy and Red Bull, it's not typical finance job, right? You're working cross-functionally, and I was reporting kind of into a sales director and a CFO and making, larger investment decisions for Red Bull. So I was exposed to the beverage landscape. So I think having my own beverage has definitely made me understand what, the channel structure, unit economics, margin expectations, those kinds of things. But that's not enough to be successful, right? You just have to be, the grit and the hustle has to be there. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. And I think Red Bull also gave me this like false sense of security, because you had all these big budgets and you had all these people. And when that's taken away from you and it's just you left, it can be quite daunting.
Oh, I got a big smile on my face. We got a lot to unpack, Sophie. I like this. So here's the deal, right? We were talking off air, let's call it that. And first thing I saw when I saw Soul Tonic, shout outs, we like celebrating business here, is the brand is epic. So the brand is beautiful. And one of the words you just used there was strategy. You talked about the strategic thinking. Like, bring me to those early days of, what drove you to make that product look and feel like that's helped you stand out.
Okay, so I knew that the product had to look disruptive. The beverage category is crazy. It is so saturated. Everything pretty much looks the same. The format is the same. It's just variations of the same crap, really. So I knew it had to look super disruptive and it had to be unique. I actually have a friend who's a graphic designer, and he's always just been a graphic designer. And I said to him, can you do some initial designs for me whilst I'm meeting with these like Korean partners? And so we started working together, and he was quite smart. He was like, I want in on the business if I'm going to do this.
Genius.
Yeah, smart man. So we've been working together ever since, and his mind is insane. So he's been very, very pivotal to how the brand looks. And we've traveled to Korea multiple times together, and we shoot a lot of our content on the streets of Seoul. So if you look at the branding, no one's ever seen it before, because no one's flying to Seoul to shoot their campaigns, shoot their content. So everything we do is disruptive and not conventional.
Man, I love that. The idea of you guys shooting in Seoul brings a big smile to my face. So then, beyond the branding, now talk to me about, one of the key things here is retail. Like, how does a 26 or whatever age you were at that time, you all go and start having these conversations with big retailers?
Yeah, it's crazy. So by the time I launched, I was 27. I had imported my first 50,000 units, and I was living in a share house in Bondi with a tiny little garage. So I would go and do loads to the warehouse, and I would put stock into the garage. And then I would just get into my little beaten up Yaris, which I actually still drive today.
Shout outs to a Yaris.
Yeah, very sturdy. I just have so much crap in it. I can't have a good car. And I would have to door knock, because unfortunately you can't go straight to a big retailer. You have to have runs on the board. So you have to show that you're successful in independence. You have to have some real data behind you, and then you can pitch to, a Woolworths, a Dan Murphy's, a Priceline, a Chemist Warehouse. So before and after work, I was door knocking, and I was so confident the product would sell both on formulation and on look and feel, that I would just give them a free 12-pack, say, put it on counter, at checkout it will sell. Trust me, you'll be calling me next week for a case. And honestly, 10 times out of 10, that's what happened. That's how I built it from basically the streets of Bondi. Every Bondi. So if you look at Bondi, the best distribution I have today is in Bondi Beach.
Still?
I think there's like 12 retailers within a 800-metre radius where you can buy it. Like, there's one precinct where you can step in 3 different directions, and there's Soul Tonic on counter in like every store.
I love that so much. What was it like for the first time when you've got that idea, and then you start to walk around Bondi and you're seeing it store after store? Or in someone's hands?
Very surreal. The most surreal time was when I was walking from my place to the beach, and I saw this like empty Soul Tonic in the dirt, like just on the ground. And I was like, holy shit, someone's bought it, they've drunk it, and then they've lidded it. That's amazing. I'm obsessed. I took a photo. I was like, this looks chic. It's like dirty Soul Tonic, cool, like put it on my Instagram. I was like, this is amazing. Those small things. And I actually keep reminding myself of those moments, because as you do, now we're in Woolies, and, we're international, and as you grow and your priorities become different, you still need that essence of that girl that just loved that dirty Soul Tonic on the Bondi Beach footpath. So yeah, it was surreal, and things become less surreal as you grow. And I think I need to keep reminding myself to bring myself back to that moment.
It's a really, really important lesson, like you've just shared, right? Because everything works in our brains in like dopamine signals, and everything becomes a new baseline. And
exactly.
You believe, the first time you see it in the dirt, you're like, oh, but it'll feel so different when I'm in, New York and it's in the biggest shelves. It's going to feel identical. And you have to kind of be really conscious of that, and you get those wins as you go along, rather than just looking back and going, oh, fuck, like, was I ever stoked about this?
I completely agree. And it's with everything, right? You just reset your baseline over and over again. And even when the first podcast I went on, I was like, oh my God, I'm on a podcast. Woo! And now, not saying I don't love this, which I do, but you become more comfortable and confident in your ability, which I think it's good and bad, right? Because it means you get that confidence to grow your business, but yeah, you still have to remain humble.
So one of the things we talked about before was this idea of, different stages of businesses require different lessons and learnings. And ultimately, often what we do is people come on a podcast that, let's call it air quotes, made it, and they're thinking about things from a reflective nature. Share me with some of those like current challenges you're experiencing and how you're navigating through them.
I love this question, because I couldn't agree more. And as an avid podcast listener, it's sometimes hard to relate when someone's, IPO'd their company for $4 billion and reflecting on the 50 best lessons. I can share some real current challenges.
Kai, so the other day I saw this cool ad where there wasn't actually an ad, but it was like me talking to you behind the camera. And essentially I'm just telling you that this is an ad for the Eat With Purpose cookbook to raise $1 million for children's cancer. So I'm thinking to do something like that. How does that sound?
In December, I launched into Woolworths Metros. It was meant to be all, but because of the strikes, it had to just be New South Wales to begin with. And they said to me, you can't go into the distribution centres. We don't have the supply chains, we can't do it. And I said, I want to be in before Christmas. And they said, well, if you do it, you have to go direct to store. And I said, okay. So the week before Christmas, I cancelled every single meeting. I loaded up my car, did 6 trips to the warehouse and back, and I individually dropped cartons and cartons, so over 4,000 units to 40 stores in Sydney. And this is after 2 and a bit years of running the business. I had to meet every single store manager, negotiate shelf on space. Most of them didn't know I was coming. I didn't even know that I had to print out an invoice because I didn't know I was going direct to store. And I had this insane experience where now I'm best friends with like the Pitt Street Mall and the Potts Point manager. They sold out in 2 weeks, some of them, and they started, reordering through me, which they're not allowed to do. They have to go through head office. But the grind and the hustle is so real when you're growing, and there's going to be things that you think you're above and you have to keep doing it. And that's an example, I think. Building rapport with your retail partners at a lower level than what you would expect is what you have to do. You're a business owner, but you're also a sales rep at the same time, and you're an intern. So you have to do all of it.
And no one is really going to ooze the same confidence and enthusiasm and excitement than a founder will about their product.
100%.
The way, I'm picturing it right now. Sophie rocks up. You're sparkling, you're frothing, you're meeting this person and you're delivering this, and you'd be, they would feel that energy and probably be equally as excited now that it's on the shelf.
Exactly. And when you get the store manager, it's fantastic, but sometimes you don't. You just get the person restacking the shelves and they're honestly like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm the founder. And they can't believe it because no business owners, no founders, the founder of like Remedy Kombucha isn't restacking the shelves at your local Woolies Metro. So they were just like almost thought I wasn't real. Directing me to different bits of the store and, I'm coming in with these huge trolleys, like so sweaty. Sometimes I'm doing 6 trips from the car just to get there, illegally parking. I'm not allowed into the loading dock because I don't have any accreditation. Like, it's a nightmare. But exactly when you do get the managers, I had the Pitt Street Mall manager in Sydney. He recognised me from the TV show, so he was so excited that I came in, and he actually went over the intercom of the whole store announcing me and said, Sophie Hood from Soul Tonic's here, come to the drinks fridge now, to have a chat with her. She might even sign no one came, obviously. Everyone's like, I'm trying to just do my shopping.
You ran to the pen shelf to quickly buy a pen.
Yeah,
You're like, I'm ready to go.
Literally.
Oh, that's so good. So it would be silly of me not to ask, right? You mentioned the TV show. Bring us and share us that moment of going on Gordon Ramsay show. Like, what was he like in real life compared to, the version we know on TV?
Gordon Ramsay is a phenomenal speaker, right? When the cameras are on, he's insane. He's so articulate. He is just born. He's a caricature. His face is huge. His makeup is, centimetres deep. He'll give you a hug and I'll just have foundation smeared across my face. But he's a sweetheart. Like, he's funny. He has, he's a family man. He above all is an incredible businessman. If you understood just how many businesses he has, you would be amazed. Like, I think it's over 100. And,
really?
You just go into even David Jones, there's 8 different plateware businesses that are his. You just don't know. He has 8 different wines. And then you have all the restaurants and all the, it was a crazy experience because I don't think many people would get annual leave from their finance job to film a TV show about their side hustle and try to negotiate that with work and make that okay. And I said, I'll be gone for 1 day or a month if I win. And that's not really kosher to say to your full-time corporate job. But I was gone for a month, and it aired a year after I filmed it. And now Janine Allis, who's actually lives nearby to here in Bilgola, she's my mentor. So I get to see her every month, which is fantastic.
I want to really dive into that, right? Because I saw that headline when I was doing a bit of research, and I was like, the power of having a mentor that's been in a similar-ish category, not quite the same, but similar-ish, and has risen to the rank she has. Speaking with you once a month must be unreal. Like, what are the key lessons you've learned from Janine?
It's perspective, actually, because I come to her with this problem that is, all consuming and I can't sleep and yada, yada, yada. And she just dismisses it faster than you can even blink, really, because she's seen that times 1,000 millions of times before. So her validating and her seeing that issue before makes my issue feel really small. And I think that's what you need when you're scaling a business. You need your issues to feel small, because if you let an issue consume you, you're not going to grow. Your business is going to grow. You can't let an issue control your next step, right? It's the way you move through them. And I think that's been the most helpful unlock, is actually the kind of internal work for me.
Amazing. And what else?
I mean, she's obviously very strategic and she's very down the line and she's very blunt. So she says things how it is. And she was like, Soph, just, so I have a mortgage of an apartment I bought 5 years ago, and she was just like, use all that money and put it into your business, take out as many loans as you can, squeeze every family member dry and just get it done. Like, do things what you can. Like, she knows how to get things done with not that much. And I think even though she's made so much money herself, and even the rise of Yochi currently, the froyo, and being involved with that.
Is that Janine's too?
That's the Allis family, yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So
I love Yochi.
That's her and her husband and her son. They own that wholly.
Oh,
so that's actually separate to Retail Zoo, which the Boost Juice kind of comes under. So yes, you can see that. And she hasn't had to put her name behind that. And the fact that she hasn't, and it's been so successful, there's some incredible things she's learned. She's just up with it. She's like, knows that TikTok's happening. She knows the trends. She's like, so film it all, like do all the behind the scenes. She's not like, she doesn't say, she doesn't think I need to spend all of this money to get stuff done. She thinks that I can do things in a really savvy, strategic way. And I like hearing that advice, because I like to get things done in a savvy way, because I do believe that, if I do get funding in the future, because I've been able to do things with not much money, I know the value of it and I know how I'll be able to scale with it.
It's critical what you're saying there, right? Like I do a lot of advisory work, and so I see all different shapes and sizes and different types of businesses. Some which are, on the roller coaster of raising capital, and others which are bootstrapped. And the common theme I see is, if people raise capital too early and they haven't learnt the financial discipline and what it takes to, take $1 and make 10 out of it, instead they just get all this money in the bank and they're like, buying ping pong tables before they get revenue. Totally. It's really critical. And so you can tell that that's probably was the journey that she was on, which was not, immediately raising capital, and learning the discipline. She's definitely learned the discipline. I mean, she's got an incredible journey. She had to make so many sacrifices as well. So, I recently got her on my podcast and I said, did you even have any friends in the early days? And she literally said, well, what are friends? Like, no, I couldn't. Like, I was raising a young family. I was in my 30s. I had to move back in with my parents. Like, absolutely not. Like, I had to sacrifice everything. So she's really come from that era as well. And I think there were definitely less females in business when she was going through that. So she does have a phenomenal perspective for me to lean on. So, I mean, that's really handy, and that's probably more valuable than the cash prize that I won from the show, is this mentorship. I literally, like the cash can come from many places, but that kind of guidance, and it's a question I actually have, which is, it's quite unusual to be able to have like early stage founder working with someone at like that category. So to other early stage founders, like what kind of advice would you have for them to look for a mentor? I hear this a lot, actually. I think a mentor is very important. And I think the second thing is actually just reaching out is the first step. A lot of people are still nervous to reach out, especially if it comes from a personal place. It's very easy to reach out on LinkedIn if you're selling someone something, but if you're doing it from a place of, I want to connect with you because I really align to what you're doing in business, that can feel a little bit more daunting. But we've got such incredible access to people because of social media, because of TikTok. People are documenting these incredible journeys. I think the first step is to reach out with a reason why you're reaching out. So if you're looking for a mentor and you think you've found one, you're following them on TikTok, you see them posting on LinkedIn, write them a paragraph about what you think they're doing that's cool and what you'd love to learn from them. Because honestly, that hits more than anything. Not just the random LinkedIn ad of, hey, I want to connect. Because you can't do anything with that. I think a personal message goes so far, and you need to look for someone that you aspire to be like, really. It's a I'm laughing, right? Because Braith, who's sitting over there. So Braith did a LinkedIn DM a couple of weeks ago. And so I get a lot of different DMs and a lot of them are, hey, or can I take you for a coffee? And I'm like, look, I can't even respond to that. Braith heard about the Founders Table. We're doing the Founders Table on the Mischief Yacht. And he said, big paragraph, all the good stuff. And then said, I'll come and wash dishes on the Founders Table on the Mischief Yacht.
Obsessed.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to have to meet this guy. And then 1 week later, he's working with us. So I second exactly what you're saying, Sophie.
What an amazing story. I love that. I completely agree, though. Something to, grab their attention and something that's just going to cut through the noise. I mean, we just get you talk about dopamine. We get dopamine hits everywhere from all these different directions, and what cuts through.
Exactly. So one of the things you just touched on, and I noticed on your Instagram, was something you're bringing out, which is about female founders.
Yes.
Talk to me about the inspiration, the why behind that, and what it is you're looking to achieve.
So I'm working with one of my good friends, Adele. She's another female founder. It's a bespoke marble company. It's beautiful Italian marble, and she's actually a mum as well. She's got a beautiful daughter a son who's 4. And we were talking about how we really feel disconnected from other female founders and find it really difficult to find our people. And when we talk about how, there's social media and there's so many, it feels like there are so many people doing this, but it's hard to find and form meaningful connections. And so that's the purpose of it. And we are not just handpicking, but we are opening up, I guess, the floor to some people that we know in our network, and we're going to start creating some groups around it and inviting people in and have, themes and topics and unpack certain business challenges that we believe we're all going through in a similar stage of growth stage businesses. I think that's really the key for us. It's that, you haven't made it quite yet. You're still on a struggle street. You're still reinvesting everything, and you're still probably paying yourself a tiny salary.
I love that. And it's interesting, right, that you share that. I feel like I've said it's interesting several times, so stop it. It's really obvious so when we started doing the Founders Table like 6 weeks ago, somewhere around there, and the Founders Table was born out of this idea, which was me and my brother Jacques, not here today, he's in Japan. Fucker.
Jealous.
They're getting 60 centimetres of snow
Skiing,
today. Whatever. I'm with Sophie, so shut up.
Yeah, exactly right. You're the real winner.
And so we were sitting and one day we were like, what would it look like if you just met every founder in Australia? We're like, how cool would that little black book be? And I put up an Instagram story post and I was like, I'm going to cook lunch at the table right there. 8 founders can put up their hand and come. And I was like, well, who's going to do that? It's in 2 days. And within 4 minutes, I'd booked up the table for the next 4 times. And I was like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. And what we've found from doing it, so it's not a product or something that we're selling. It's just purely bring people who are like-minded, similar categories, similar stages, and share and celebrate in each other's success, and also kind of struggle together. And what we've found is the appetite for it is huge. So I'm imagining from that I'm actually really excited. Like when I saw that, I got really excited because I think there is definitely a gap. There's these big clubs out there.
Well, exactly. There are so many of these big clubs and they feel very daunting, and they're the ones reaching out to you on LinkedIn, trying to get you to join them, and this and that, and membership fees, and you have to be at certain categories and you have to be at certain revenue, and it feels like its own business. And that's not what we're trying to do. I think for us, it's all about connection. And when you talk about your Founders Table, I have absolutely no doubt that founders that have met each other at that table are now connecting and are now doing some kind of business deal together, or they're, soundboarding off each other. And that's what it's really about.
That's exactly what it's about. Because so one of the things we capture is questions for people prior to they come. So we've got 175 people on the wait list. And the most common theme we've seen is loneliness. So the lonely journey of the solo founder, because to the point that Janine made around the friends, it's it's a weekend, you're sharing the different tumultuous times you're going through in business, and it's hard to, for a friend who's not in business to kind of understand that.
It can be very difficult. And I think what can be quite difficult, especially for the female founders that I see in these growth stage businesses, is that when they start getting some, wins and runs on the board, the perception is that they're absolutely killing it and they have all this money. But that can be the trickiest stage for people to understand, is that, yes, you might be in a major retailer. Yes, you might be able to buy your product in store now. You don't have to be just online. But the cost of doing business now is significantly higher. The marketing spend that goes associated to those retailer plans is very high, and that bit is hard to navigate because you don't want to just walk around telling all your friends that you're not going as well as you are, and that conversation becomes quite exhausting, and want to keep things light and positive. And so I think that real sticky growth bit, going to the next level, can be quite challenging.
And it can be challenging for a long time, right? Like, it really depends on the decision of the founder. Some people try and take money off early, and often that will be at the cost of growth. I'm passionate about this topic, right? Because our decision as myself and my two brothers founding our business, we essentially didn't take any money till the end.
Yeah.
And so, my wife and I got married on a farm. I cooked for the wedding to save costs.
Well, you're a great cook. The barramundi was amazing.
Our engagement party was in our signboard factory. So all of the friends and family are here, in our little 100 square meter place. And right at the end, we were doing $41 million in revenue. And my brother Jacques has 2 kids, and they were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Manly. And because he didn't want the kids to have to sleep in the lounge room, he'd let the kids sleep in the bedrooms, and him and his wife would sleep on a mattress in the lounge room. So you'd leave a business. We had 400 people, right? Wow. And so the perception is, you guys are just printing cash, fully. Right? And then you get back, and then you get home, and you just go to sleep in your 2-bedroom apartment on the ground. So I know that feel.
It's crazy. Were you guys paying yourself a salary though, or was it quite minimal?
So for the first 7 years, maximum salary was $60,000. And then
I like hearing that. It gives me, I don't know. At the moment, I'm not paying myself a salary because I'm using the show money. It was a cash prize.
Amazing.
So I can, afford to live off that for a little bit and reinvest a little bit of it. But that salary thing, that there needs to be more noise about that. And even at your late stages, when you're doing crazy amounts of revenue and you had a huge team, to only be paying yourself $60,000.
Well, and in the last 3 years, the maximum salary ever was $180,000. The thing
even
is,
so,
yeah.
Compared to, on the scale of what you're turning over, it's still minimal. And
I think it is one of those important topics, right? Because the challenge I see with some of the early stage businesses I advise is they actually start to incrementally step up their spending too early, because you do have the challenge of the cash coming into the bank. And if you haven't created really clear separation between my money and business money, before you know it, they've got the fancy car. And the biggest risk I actually see is the blessing we got to have is I got to go from the Volkswagen Golf. It was a Toyota Yaris before then. I went from Volkswagen Golf to the beach house. And so I got to feel that wow. But if you incrementally continuously step up, it's you almost never get that total satisfaction at the other end.
Yeah, it's that new normal, that new baseline, right? And you just, the next thing is you want more. I mean, that's it's life. Materialistic. Everyone wants more the more you have, and you have to remind yourself that A, it doesn't actually make you happy, and B, it's not a marker of success. And I think that's the most important thing. Everyone has all these markers of success. Fundraising might be one. It doesn't mean your company is great. It just means just because you could raise capital doesn't mean you've got an epic company. But then blinged out, all the things might be a marker of success, but it's not really.
What's Sophie's markers for success? It's 5 years from today. You've lived a great life. You're doing some amazing things in the business, and you're really proud of what you've achieved. What are those things?
So I've got a really boring one, which is a business one. I get so excited about being in a retailer that was on my hit list. So maybe it's a chain of beauty stores in New York. We're already in beauty stores in New York, but maybe it's a bigger chain, and it's educating people about ingestible beauty and beauty from within, and it's about what's in your body, not on it, and that actually sticking. Something that I've set out to do, sticking, right? Creating a category, and that's sticking. And then my other marker of success is being able to travel. I love travel. I love different cultures. I'm a huge foodie, and if I can travel to all the countries that I want to travel to over a period of time, that would make me very happy.
Love that. So good. If you kind of look at the, we're in those kind of high growth phase of your business right now. What do you think some of the key takeaways for the audience would be that's helped you be on the trajectory you are on?
I think the main thing has been storytelling and really building out the story. You'd be surprised how interested retailers are about the story and the vision and the future and what your company is doing to, I guess, grow with them. as well. And so if I take the Woolies example, I pitched to the general manager of Woolies Metro just 6 weeks before I went into Woolies, and that's unheard of. Usually it takes a year, et cetera, et cetera. He just believed me and the vision and the story, and I believe I've been able to articulate my story so well, and my story is intertwined with the business story. And that's how I show up on TikTok. It's how I show up in podcasts. It's how I talk to my retailers. It's always the same. It's consistent. It's about bringing people into that. And I think that can be a really hard thing to nail down in the early stage, especially if you created something because you think it's just a gap in the market. Where's the depth, right? How do you build out that depth? And that's something you have to sit with and really figure out, because it's going to be part of your entire marketing strategy in one way or another.
Did you have to kind of backtrack that from, you've got this idea and you're like, okay, if I go to Korea, that will create a story? Or did you built in, you're like, okay, now what's the story? Like, how did you think about creating that?
The story definitely got built out when I was able to partner with Mr. Park, because the whole story is partnering with him and his generational techniques and his formulations that we will be able to create together. And then we've got the added benefit of him being such an incredible community man, giving back to his local community in Jeonju, me facilitating him being able to open up a restaurant which gives back to the local orphanage. And he takes us around in his, he hires a limousine when we come to Korea. He takes us around the local community and takes us to every one of his favourite restaurants, and he's treated like a king because he's just grown up there. He loves it and he gives back so much. That's the story. And I didn't know that was the story before. I just was a girl who was interested in these ingredients and I wanted to create something using it because I was fascinated. But he became the story. And then when I was able to go on the TV show and I could articulate that story, my entire final episode was a TED Talk, and it was all about Mr. Park and I. That was the whole TED Talk. And that was my winning speech in the end. So people resonate with that.
Sophie, this is so good. You're sharing the story. Everybody listening to this is going to be like, sometimes I get comments which are like, Frank, can you stop laughing? And so,
I love that.
And so today's one's going to be like, people are going to be like, I can hear you smiling. It's annoying. So stop smiling.
It's so cute. I love, you're so smiley and happy. That's so good. That's what you want.
It's just I can hear the story. I haven't heard the TED Talk, but just hearing like Mr. Park and that whole, it's really cool. Like, I'm really fascinated about building and kind of baking in the PR story into a business. So like with our next business we're working on is literally thinking about from the ground up, going, okay, I know 5 years from today we're going to be at this certain place. What's the story I'm going to be telling? And how can I backtrack and create that story from the ground up? So it's not something you have to go launch, you get product market fit, you're scaling, now I have to go back to a marketing company and be like, what should we do? How should we paint the story? It's like, no, you've started, let the seed grow, and the story is definitely part of, and it's like, almost like free marketing, if you will.
It is free marketing. Well, until recently, I barely spent $1 on marketing. I refuse. I've trialed with some PR agencies and marketing agencies over the show period, but honestly, nothing gets more cut through than me showing up on TikTok, engaging with my audience. It's free. Having your own TikTok for the brand, rolling it into Instagram, going onto podcasts, being authentic, meeting up with people, saying yes to, when that person reaches out to you and they say that they love what you're doing, go and meet them. You will not believe what happens. But talking about that story, don't go to a marketing agency to get them to create your story. That's the one thing you can't do. You have to create it. It's your story. You're going to be the one speaking it. And the last thing you want to do is, I feel like everyone's radar for bullshit is so high now. So high. Because we've just got so much stuff. We're watching so many things. So if we don't believe something, you're not going to cut through. It's so true. I get this challenge sometimes when I do content. I have this balance between normal Frank talking, but then also trying to create almost like a structure or a script for the piece of content. And I see your face immediately, because when the script, I just don't sound like me, but then the structure of the video is better. And it's like this balancing act being just genuinely authentic and also accidentally stumbling on the words or saying interesting 7 times. Totally. It's a real hard one. And then with social media, it's what's going to get the most clicks and what's the hook? And, you just picking up the camera, you might not have a hook to begin with, but you might get there with some kind of ramble and, saying a few words multiple times. But to me, I'd prefer to be known as that than to have these highly curated videos. But you're in a different situation, to be fair, because, you've exited your company, you're you've got a videographer.
Got a team of people.
You've got a
Hello,
team. You've got a great team.
For everybody who can't see, we're looking at 25 people in our studio right now.
25? I counted 50. Are you serious?
I was thinking about that when you came up today.
I can barely see you. See your people.
There's makeup just constantly stopping me. So talk to me about personal brand, right? Like obviously with the different podcasts, and you just mentioned TikTok, it's part of what you're doing. Like how have you found it, and what's the journey been like?
God, I was one of the people who used to like pay out influencers. I swear to God, I was like, oh my, when a few of people I knew started to become like an influencer, I was like, oh God, I would never do that. Like I would never put my face behind the camera like that and promote anything really. But remember, I came from a very corporate job, EY, LVMH, Red Bull a little bit different, but you can't just be, content creating. It wasn't a thing, especially not in the finance team. God, no. But then the show was a trigger. So going on the show and then the PR team being like, okay, like you need a bit of a personal brand because when people watch you on TV, they're going to need something to then follow up and resonate with. And I was like, okay, why don't I just start a TikTok and see how it goes? And it was that exposure therapy thing. I did a couple of videos. Then I started to just not care. And then I started meeting these incredible like other people through TikTok. And I was like, wow, this is really an amazing platform to connect with people, especially if you're taking it offline. And I think the unlock for me has been trying to be as real as possible, trying to be not as cute, like just as little curation as possible so that people, when they do reach out and I meet them offline, have the exact same experience online versus off. And TikTok's been a huge unlock for me. Podcasts have been a huge unlock for me, and just the people I've been able to connect with.
And are you able to connect the dots for what it's done for your business? Has it been like people wanted to be hired, or has it been revenue through the door? What have you been able to kind of find from it?
All of it. A really tangible example is the category manager from the Harris Farm of New Zealand was watching my TikToks, and it's called Farrow Fresh. And she reached out on email and said, hey, I've been watching your TikToks. Love the product. I want to get it in the stores.
So good.
We're the Harris Farm of New Zealand. I was like, perfect. Sent her product. She pitched it in. We're now ranged there. And now over Christmas time, in the first 8 weeks, we were the highest performing wellness beverage, outperforming all of your remedies, your Reapers, all of those household kind of more names now, all your health shots, both in units sold and revenue.
Wow.
So, and that was from her watching my TikToks. So that's a real tangible example of what can happen. And there are so many more. I mean, when I did the hand delivery to Woolworths, I TikToked the whole thing. And then I had a bunch of PR journalists reach out to me saying, hey, we've been watching your TikToks. We'd love to run articles on how you're going to every single Woolworths in your Yaris.
so good.
You know what I mean? Like it's just that stuff. And it's free PR. You don't need a PR agency to, pitch that in for you. That's why I don't do that anymore. I like the inbound journals. Coming
to you, I think the power for me, I think, is when you meet someone in the live, when you meet someone in the flesh.
In the live.
when you meet someone in the flesh that has been following your content, the amount of context they have and understanding when you are like authentically you, it makes it so much simpler. Do you know what I mean? Like it creates this big bridge where immediately they kind of know who you are, and provided, like you said, you're the same person, it cuts through really quickly. So what I found a lot of the time is it becomes like a sieve, because the people who do reach out and you do sit down with, like I've gone on like, it's like almost weird. Like it's like a blind date with a random person in the city at lunch, and I'm like, oh, just follow the thread, it'll be fine. And you meet someone, I'm like, oh, now they become like a really good friend and really good person in business, and like just cuts through. It's so much simpler, as well as team members reaching out and going, hey, I want to work with you. Currently have someone from the UK who's been listening to the podcast. I just want to let you know, if there's an opportunity in the next business for you, I will move my family and come and work with you. And I'm like,
but they're the kind of people you want on your team, because they've got a lot of context as to who you are. You've been authentically yourself across all of these different platforms, right? So they know what they're getting into, and that's what they want.
Exactly.
I feel the exact same way. I have these girls who reach out and they're like, I love that you're doing X, Y, Z, this. So when we meet up, we have so much to connect on, and we automatically just vibe. And I don't necessarily think, I'm not for everyone, but for the people that are coming inbound, I am for. That's what's really helpful. I think that sieve kind of analogy is perfect.
That's the special part. So, we've talked about some of these like kind of the big long-term horizons. When you're really honest with yourself, what do you think the thing that will hold you back from getting to where you want to be?
I think what's holding me back currently, and that's why I'm actually looking at this, I'm taking a step back to really look at the business structure, is that I am doing too much. I really am. I'm across everything so much now. And I think there's an opportunity to let some other people in to really facilitate growth properly. My problem is that I just get so much more cut through when I do it. Every presentation I do, the chances of being successful are much higher. So I need to let that go. But I still am in that brand building stage. So I'm still operating as this tiny little startup. But then I am scaling. Now we're in 4 countries. It's like, how am I managing that? So that's kind of my superpower. But it's also what's holding me back as well. And it's so funny because I started off in consulting, right? And I used to do this for other companies. I would take a look back and I would look at what's going on. And if I saw my business, I always put myself as Sophie the consultant. What would I say? And I would 100% say, you need to take a step back on certain things that are just they're just a time waster for you right now.
So what's stopping you?
What's stopping me from doing that? Cash is the main one, especially the people that I would want are very expensive. And that's quite tricky, right? And it's always that, and then there's that thing, do you raise too early at a lower valuation? We're experiencing such significant growth year on year. And I put in all of these, I guess, processes in place that can facilitate this long-term growth. And so raising right now, would that be the bad decision? But I don't know. Sometimes you have to take a little hit to grow as well. So it's a tricky one.
I like it. We like tricky ones here. That's good. So pretend you're asking yourself the questions, given you've recently started a podcast. What have I left on the table? What about Sophie should we know that I haven't asked?
That's a great question. What do you know? I feel like a lot of what I do is done based on humour. And I think being funny is the best trait that I have. And I think having a really rogue sense of humour that people don't understand is fantastic. And it's how I connect with my family. And my family are geniuses, but they're also the stupidest people I've ever met at the same time. And I think that's what makes me, me, and what makes us, us. And that's how I do business as well. I look at everything in a really positive, humorous way before I see the negative. And that is sometimes hard to get across in these podcasts, right? Because it is so reflective and business and blah, blah, blah. But, there's a lot of things I'd want to say on this podcast, but I don't think I'm allowed to, So, no. But I think that's something about me that I really struggle with myself. And I did a TikTok on this actually. And I said, I find that sometimes I am very real on TikTok, but it's very hard to be funny on TikTok without being pigeonholed as like the skit funny person.
Yeah.
When you're talking about business and scaling and trying to give, the behind the scenes, especially when I have that example, you've got retailers looking at what you're doing. Do they want this? It's a really hard balance. Like, how do you show your personality enough to show you have personality, but not too much that people, don't buy into you and don't think that you're, serious enough to be able to, build a business.
It's like you're speaking to my soul, Sophie. Yeah, Kai and I are having this challenge right now because I feel like sometimes the content I'd want to actually do would be outlandish. And then
right?
I've definitely had the moments where, like, recently I had one of the clips and I swore in it. Sorry, Mum. And then my mum sends me an email and she's like, I just want to let you know, I'm like, it's really
oh my God, the email.
It's really disappointing that you swore. And I was like, oh. And so, it's this balancing act.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard. Like, my dad still calls my first product the fucked up pear juice. Still, to this day, he's like, I can't believe people care more about your fucked up pear juice than anything I've ever done. Quite literally. That's the quote. But it's true. They do care more about my fucked up pear juice. So, sorry, Dad.
Oh, that's good. We'll be clipping that one. Thank you, Guy. Last question for you. It's still early on in the journey, but I want to give you that moment to be able to reflect. What are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of having the grit to move through a lot of challenges and just keeping on. I think a lot of people could have quit a lot earlier than I have. I've had some really, really insane, detrimental legal battles that I've come across very early on in my business that some people might not have made it out of. And I think this keeping on mentality has made me the most proud. Just sometimes it's just a day at a time, and if you can get to the next day, then that's a success.
Amazing. And I lied to you. I have one more question after that one. The 20-year-old Sophie's listening and she's thinking about starting a business.
The consultant.
What do you want to say to her?
I want to say, go for it. Fucking do it. Give it a shot. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Love that. Sophie, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.